Hi everyone, Paul Kagabine from the Garland County Library, and I'm here with Mary Zunick, who is the Hot Springs. And this is our very first program of 2022 virtually that we're hosting. We've had many over the past year with Mary, and she's done a great job. And if you want to go back and watch all those episodes of the Gallery Walk Talk series, they're all available in our archives on Facebook and YouTube for you to enjoy. And we've had a lot of great local artists. And we have another one tonight who a lot of you might know is a friend of the library, Richard Stevens. Very popular local watercolor artist who has done workshops at the Garland County Library for years, and we hope to be able to return those classes in person here in the near future. So stay tuned on that. And if you have any questions or comments at any time for Mary or Mr. Stevens, don't hesitate to comment those and we'll read them off at the end. So, Mary, welcome. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. Thanks. Boy, we've come a long way since we first started this last year, and had some technical difficulties, had some smooth shows. Every time's an adventure. So hopefully this will be one of those where everything goes exactly as planned. And thank you so much to Paul and to the entire staff at the Garland County Library. I know there are many of us who the last year we've been more well informed, been able to participate more fully with programming at the library, thanks to programs like Gallery Walk Talk that we are enjoying tonight, and Sister City ones, but all different types of programming. And the title of tonight's talk or chat is Gallery Walk Talk. And the reason it's called that is because Hot Springs has a long-standing tradition of gallery walk the first Friday of every single month for over 32 years. And so not only does Hot Springs have a thriving arts community with artists living and working here, we also have a number of galleries. Some of them have been in business for many, many years. One of them even since the gallery walk first began. And so I'll be sharing with you this evening a little bit about what's going on for January Gallery Walk, which will take place this Friday evening. And January is kind of a little bit of a slower month for the galleries, and some of them chose to take the month off and kind of maybe they're recuperating from Christmas or getting all set for 2022. But so we won't have quite as many galleries to chat about this evening. But for me, I always have a hard time making it to all of the galleries anyway. So this way, maybe I can make it to every single gallery during Gallery Walk on Friday night. So we'll get started here. This is just a couple of images that you can see in galleries. I think both of those are from Justice Gallery. But Paul's going to be running the slideshow tonight. You can see there it's from 5 until 9 at most galleries. But if you'll check out the Hot Springs Sister City program Facebook page, I'm sorry, not Hot Springs Sister City, wrong program. The Hot Springs Area Cultural Alliance Facebook page, we do an event each month that details what will be happening during Gallery Walk, or hotspringsarts.org, and it will give you the same information that I'm going to share with you this evening, but every single month we do that so that you'll know what's happening in each of the galleries. So if you'll advance to the next slide, Paul. The first couple that we'll talk about are on Broadway. It's the Warehouse, and then right next to the Warehouse is Esther's. The Warehouse is kind of like an arts festival. Different artists come in each month and set up their pop-up gallery space at the Warehouse, which is an event space in kind of directly across from the fire station on Broadway. And so that's the Warehouse, and many different artists. There's music and food and drink. And then right around the corner from the Warehouse is Esther's. Esther's, that's our newest gallery in Hot Springs. They have a wide variety of different artists represented at Esther's, as well as there's John Mark Baker, there's Stevie Spargo, Don Watson, many different artists have their work featured there at Esther's Gallery. And so you'll want to make those two stops on Broadway, maybe to start off the event or wrap up the evening. And so on from Esther's, you will carry on over to Central Avenue to Justice Fine Art Gallery. Justice Fine Art Gallery, I think they've been open 17 years. Dolores Justice is just not only an incredible artist, but has truly a beautiful gallery and gallery space. I love to go in there. If you can't go during gallery walk, I just encourage you to stop by and visit her space another time. The featured artwork for Gallery Walk evening will be work by Mark Blaney, Kristen DeGeorge, Mike Elsas, Robin Horn, Dolores Justice, of course, Michael Francis Reagan, Tony Saldino, Sandra Sell, and you can see one of Sandra Sell's pieces there, Gary Simmons, Jean Sparling, Rebecca Thompson, Elizabeth Weber, Stephen Weiss, and many, many more. Every gallery walk is a treat at Justice Gallery. So from Justice Gallery, you'll carry on down the street to the Artist Workshop Gallery. Artist Workshop Gallery features many different artists. This will be the members exhibit for January. It's an annual event in January. They'll be hanging in the featured artists section for January and February. Just the members exhibit features work of all 28 of the gallery's members. So you'll want to stop by and check that out. And then on down the street from Artist Workshop Gallery is All Things Arkansas. All Things Arkansas, they have many different Arkansas gift items, but also artwork as well and jewelry. Really some beautiful items there, custom crystal, custom jewelry, as well as some lovely artwork. And there's usually the very talented Ben Carey will be playing live music at All Things Arkansas as well. From All Things Arkansas, you'll on down Central Avenue, you move to Gallery Central. That is on the first floor of the Waters Hotel in downtown Hot Springs. It's a wonderful gallery space with James Hayes glass and spirit tiles, by the Lou spirit tiles. But Janice Polychron, her work hangs not only in the Gallery Central space, but also in the Avenue restaurant space. So Gallery Central kind of spills out on into the restaurant. So if you're in the restaurant, you'll want to you'll have some beautiful surroundings with Gallery Central's artwork. And then on around the corner to Whittington Avenue, Dryden Pottery. Zach Dryden is the third generation potter at Dryden Pottery. Very talented, beautiful custom items and pottery there at Dryden Pottery. In business over 75 years. Have been creating beautiful artwork in downtown Hot Springs. So as I said, it's a little bit of an abbreviated gallery walk for this month. But mark your calendar, bring your friends. First Friday of every single month is Gallery Walk. And now, joining us this evening, now we'll move on to our special featured guest, the very talented Richard Stevens. And I'm just going to share with you a little bit of information about Richard before we bring him onto the screen. Richard's a native of Hot Springs. He earned his bachelor's degree in art from the University of Central Arkansas, and he indicated it in his bio, so I'm going to say he earned it in 1969. After serving in the Army as an illustrator, he began his professional career in 1971 with a design firm in Little Rock. 3 years later, he opened his own graphic design studio in Hot Springs, and he continues to provide design and production services for a wide range of commercial accounts. Having been introduced to the medium in college, Stevens rediscovered transparent watercolor in the early 90s. He quickly garnered a reputation nationwide for his confident, loose, impressionistic paintings. For the past 15 years, Richard has shared his passion for the medium by conducting painting workshops around the country. He's the son of school teachers and has a very easy and comfortable personality, as you'll hear and learn this evening if you don't have the pleasure of knowing Richard. You'll certainly feel like you know him after our visiting this evening. He's enjoyed a successful 45-year career as a freelance commercial artist, graphic designer, and in the advertising and marketing industry. Although recognized for his landscape, architectural, and figurative work, he feels very real subjects. I'm sorry. He feels the real subjects of most of his paintings are his brushwork and the light he tries to capture and amplify through value, contrast, and an unexpected color palette. Believing that drawing is the foundation for all good art and design, he often allows his pencil work to show through and become an engaging element in his watercolor. So I'll just ask Paul if you will have Richard join us. Hi, Richard.
Hey, Mary, thank you so much. I'm so honored to be part of this tonight, and thank Paul. The library has a special place in my heart. I could tell some really good stories about my involvement with the library. Gary Simmons and I, initially helped with the advertising campaign to have what we call the new library. It's been there a few years now. And as Paul mentioned, I've taught several workshops there and look forward to teaching maybe a couple more this year. So.
Oh, absolutely. Paul and I have chatted, and he said yours are some of the most popular workshops that they do. In fact, they fill up almost before they even get them listed. So I always say I want to take one, but I'm not quick enough. Well, I'm not very talented, but not quick enough on the draw to get signed up. But maybe one of these days I'll get to attend one of your workshops.
Forward to that, the theme of our workshops at the library is beginning workshop, beginning watercolor. So.
That would be me.
Okay.
So I shared with the audience a little bit about your background and your bio, but what led you to choose art? You came from school teachers, grew up here in Hot Springs. How did you end up becoming an artist?
Well, my parents used to tell the story that as a very, very young child, maybe 4 or 5 years old, that I drew all the time, that I would lay on the floor with a pencil and a piece of paper and just draw. And so it's something that I have always done and continue to do that all through my academic life, and did get a degree in art from college. I really don't consider myself talented. I consider myself passionate. It's something I love, so I do it. And I've done it a lot and a lot and a lot. And I practice a lot and a lot. And as a result of that, like any other skill someone might develop, you get better at it.
Were there any other areas that you thought about going into besides the arts? If you had
Well, I did think about architecture because it was very similar and some of the same skills and a creative process. But in college, I was fortunate enough to have an instructor that had come from the graphic design industry. And he encouraged me to consider that, and I did. And as you mentioned, I have had an enjoyable 45-year career in the graphic design industry, and still do a little bit of it. Mainly my focus now is watercolor workshops. But yeah, all creative endeavors, whether it be architecture or painting or sculpture or in the two-dimensional arena, are pretty similar. And even dance and music and literature and all those things have the same elements and principles of design that we use in our two-dimensional art. So don't get started. I'll get into my teacher mode real quickly, so I'll try to resist that.
Oh no, that's awesome. We like it. You're a very good teacher. Well, we heard about your long career and the different areas that you've obviously been very successful in. If you were going back and starting over, is there anything you'd do differently?
Well, I was very, very, very involved in sports and athletics, and I enjoyed that, and it was a good thing in my life. But I've often wondered in retrospect if I had devoted that energy to my art, or especially watercolor at that time, where I might be in relation to where I am now. Not knocking my time as an athlete. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and friendships and experiences and moments to remember. But there was a lot of energy involved in that if I had directed that toward my watercolor painting, where would I be? I've been seriously painting watercolor now for about 40 years. I discovered it in college and then went about 20 years without painting very much at all. So those 20 years, that might have made a difference.
It's interesting that you mentioned sports, because many people say that they want their children to participate in sports because it allows you to be a part of a team and have that camaraderie. Do you, as an artist, have an opportunity to have that same type of connection with other fellow artists?
Oh, for sure. We have been blessed here in Hot Springs. I have been, and being part of a life drawing group that we've been getting together for over 30 years, about 35 years. And the camaraderie that I've shared with those guys and ladies has been very influential on my art career, especially with my watercolor. Uh, we draw together, we share our ideas and our technique, and we critique each other gently and lovingly, but in a positive way. So yes, it's very much a teamwork. And of course, I can't be interviewed without mentioning Gary Simmons, a dear friend of mine, and he and I have been joint venturing and actually had a business together for a few years, a design business, and we still do projects together. So we make a pretty good team, I must say.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, you've even taught some workshops together in the past, haven't you?
We have a very unique workshop situation, and one that Gary and I both realized was needed out there, and that's that Gary teaches the drawing aspect, which is an important part of watercolor. And then I come in, and based on what Gary has shared with the class, I teach the watercolor part of it. And over the years of teaching watercolor workshops, I've noticed that the lack of drawing skills are just so evident, and they're so critical to being able to produce a decent painting. So it's a very unique workshop, and we've done 4 or 5 of them. We have one scheduled for this year, in fact, and it's a real opportunity for students to experience some real positive things.
Wonderful. And now the workshops that you do, where all do you conduct workshops normally in a typical year, non-COVID year?
Yes. I mentioned someone today. In the last year and a half, I've had 21 workshops canceled due to COVID. Uh, I have my first workshop scheduled for 2022, the first week of February in El Dorado, having a show down there also. In fact, I'm delivering the show in the morning. But after that, the middle of February, I'm going to Key West and teach a workshop at the studios of Key West. And the following week, I will be in Sarasota teaching at the Sarasota Art Center. So that's a pretty nice start of the year. Also, this year, I will be in Illinois. I'll teach 2 workshops up there. I will be in North Carolina. I have 2 there. And I have a few in Arkansas, and including the one at the library. We'll schedule at least 1 and maybe 2 this year. I have taught all over the country. Excuse me. I've been fortunate to have workshops in all four corners of the country, and it's really a real joy and pleasure to travel and meet artists and share hopefully my passion and my information with them, and give them something that is important to me, and hopefully will become an important part of their life.
Well, and that's where I was going with that. You know, we are so fortunate to have you here in Hot Springs. You travel all over the country, and people travel great distances to attend those workshops as well, I know. And so we're very fortunate that you share your workshops with the library and other areas around the state, so that those of us here in Arkansas can attend and be a part of your workshops. So well, let's move on and let's see some of your artwork, and that'll allow you to share. There we go, Hot Springs artists, so we can see what we're talking about. I think pretty much everybody in Hot Springs who's watching this has probably seen your work, and maybe they're even very fortunate and have one of your pieces. So okay, so go on to the first screen. Okay. Now tell us a little bit about these characters and how.
Cartooning was my first love and is still my love. And this little piece that you see in here, titled Gallery Walk, it was I was at Gallery Walk at Esther's, and I had a sketchbook with me, and I just did some sketches of some of the people that walked in, and then a lot of these are just characters that I make up as I say, they just flow out of the end of the pen. And but cartooning has been a very important part of my art career. I've done it at some levels professionally a lot, and mainly it's something I do every day. I do characters and cartoon sketches every day just for my own pleasure. And that's where this came from. And I thought, well, if I'm going to show some of my artwork, I really need to show my first love. So there it is. It's all over the place in Hot Springs. Gary Simmons and I have a contest about who can capture the waitresses and the waiters, caricature-wise, the best. And sometimes I win. Most of the time, Gary wins. So there is napkin art all over Hot Springs, Arkansas. And Gary and I actually went to Paris together a couple of years ago, and there is napkin art in Paris. So
now, napkin art. Tell me what napkin art is.
Well, obviously in the restaurant, we will ask for, do you have any white napkins? And they'll bring us a stack of, oh no, we need more than that. And they're wondering what's going on. We always ask what the waitress's name is so we can include her name and then his or her name. And then we will do often a caricature or just maybe a little statement with a little graphic involved. So it's really something that, you know, the service industry is you're not always dealing with pleasant people. And we think that, well, maybe this is a highlight of their day. Not that the art is that great, but that someone took the time to do something personal to say thank you. And it makes us feel good, and I think it makes them feel good.
Oh, absolutely. Now, Paul, would you hit play? I think if you click on that, it will play a video. No, can you go back? If you double click on the image. I implanted I wanted to share a.
I found it all. Give me just a moment. I'll have to.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Because it actually is a video of Richard drawing. So people can actually see how to someone who is not talented like I, or maybe some of the other people out there, how these characters just seem to flow out of the tip of your pen. I mean, I know you're holding the pen, so that it's truly flowing out of you, but how you capture images and personalities. Here we go. Thank you, Paul. Sorry to throw that one at you.
No problem.
The sound isn't sharing.
Keep it moving. I don't try not to stop. And little cartoon characters that I've drawn 1,000 times. Not the same character, but same style. And just keep it moving. And you get fluid line, interesting line work that way. And much more interesting than something that's carefully done. Yeah. Now this is done with a Palate pen, which does not allow me to do a wash over it. If I use a Sharpie, I can come back and do a wash. Let's do one more just for the fun of it. Let's just do a big face. Yeah, just a little profile. Cartooning is my first love. I almost went into taking a shot at editorial cartooning, and I don't necessarily regret that I didn't, but and I still do, I do a little bit of that actually in a weird way for my local newspaper, but I just love to draw. Yeah, these are real quick little sketches that are fun to do. The faster you draw, at least I believe, the more expressive they're going to be. Let's maybe do one over here. Make a pretty lady out of this one. Don't want to overdo a lady's nose. Do not want to do that. Pretty nose. Simple, just a little indication. Yeah. Always have a nice dark area under the chin. Gave her a major chin, didn't I? Little quick strokes like that. There, that was fun.
Okay, there we go.
That was fun.
It just flows right out of you. That's just mind blowing to see you create that. I've watched you and Gary do that so many times, and it just boggles my mind each time. So when you were a kid, would you do that? Just sit and draw?
Just, I've drawn those characters or characters like them many thousands of them. It's very entertaining for me. I love doing it. It's just fun, and people enjoy them if I happen to see them. So,
oh, absolutely.
thank you for doing that. That was just I'd forgotten about that thing, and it's something I was practicing doing a video, and had that scrap of paper there, and I said, well, I'll just do a little cartoon.
Well, it's wonderful, and let me say, anybody who receives one of your sketches on the napkins, it is a treasure. I have a little stack of them. My husband and I both do, and so those are great treasures and a fantastic tip. Okay, so let's go on now and see some of your other. Would you mind sharing the next slide? We'll pivot on to very different style. So,
right. I have done, for the Sentinel record, about 80 type tunes. That's what I call them. Ironically, as an artist, I do these political cartoons or editorial cartoons by just using typography. In my commercial art career, one of the things that I really felt that I concentrated on was handling type in a design way, designing with type. And so that's what I've used in all of these, what I call, again, type tunes. And this is just an example of one of them. What I tried to do was to have an idea that I could interpret simply by manipulating a word, or in this case, of course, I emphasized the letters I in the words, and then make hopefully a positive and statement about that. Liberals and conservatives, that's the problem, too many I's and not enough we's. Well, yeah, I think that's that's appropriate sometimes. But I try to be positive in the type tunes that I have done for the newspaper, and some of them are just local things that I would acknowledge someone's accomplishment, or try to say some things about some activities that are going on that are worthy of recognizing. So again, even though I love to do cartooning, and you'd think, well, if you're going to do editorial, you draw it. This is just a color phase of design. Handling the typography and the type is as much about design as it is in painting in watercolor or doing a cartoon. Well, that's where these come from. I just thought it would be interesting to share these.
oh, absolutely. I mean, it's like thinking, what is it? Thinking from both sides of your brain. I mean, one, you're using drawings to make people think. Well, this is so much more literal that you're using words to stretch people's imagination or their mind in different directions. So
well, it's really fun. I've enjoyed doing them, and the ideas just kind of come to me, and or I'll put a word down and I'll see something in it that I can manipulate some way to make another statement out of it.
Excellent. And I know many organizations in Hot Springs have been very fortunate to have had your assistance in logos and campaign letter, campaign design. And so you're very, always very kind to assist with your talents. So
Well,
thank you. And okay, so we will move on now to what people think of when they hear Richard Stevens' art. So I almost made that horrible mistake that so many people make. I almost called you Richard Simmons.
well, Gary and I both answered to either name. We've been told.
So many
When someone calls us that, I'll break into, or Gary will break into a little dance, And,
Yep. Gary Stevens and Richard Simmons.
yeah, right.
Okay, so you've been so kind to go through and share examples of your artwork, and so many of them are from here in Hot Springs. So people who are watching tonight might go, oh gosh, that looks familiar. So if you would mind share with us about, I might pop a few questions in here too, but a little bit about the artwork, about what led you to this, the different pieces, and your style, how each one is a little bit different as well.
I will. I'll be happy to. I'll try to keep it brief but informative and maybe entertaining. Watercolor is a unique medium, and I'll talk about that just for a second. In that, with oil, acrylic, pastel, and other opaque mediums, you can make corrections, wipe it off, start all over, massage it until you get what you want. With watercolor, because it is a transparent medium and everything that's underneath shows through and it influences the next layer, we don't have the opportunity to make corrections. You get really one good shot at it, and that's one of the things that watercolor has a reputation of being the most difficult medium, and I certainly agree with that. But it's also very, very rewarding when they work. So with that preface, I have included in the slideshow that we'll see here a lot of hot springs scenes. First of all, I've done a lot of hot springs scenes, but I thought that the viewing audience might be particularly interested and relate to some of the imagery that we'll see and say, oh, well, yeah, I've seen that, or I've driven by there, or looky there, I recognize that building. This happens to be a little bungalow house, its own building. And I drove by it one day, and the light was just spectacular, hitting the front of it, and then the darks that were around it and amplified the light even more. And I stopped and took a quick picture of it, and later on did a painting. And this painting has actually served me very well. It's won a couple of major awards, and I learned a few years ago to not let go or not sell those paintings that are special to me. And there are paintings out there that I wish I had back, but so I still am in possession of this painting, and it's one of my favorites.
Now, do you usually take a photo, or do you sit and paint it in the moment?
Well, I do work from photographs a lot, but I also work from memory or imagination a lot. A lot of the paintings I do are kind of spontaneous, and don't have an image or a sketch or a photograph in front of me. And I also do plein air painting, which is painting on location. I don't do as much of that as I should. I really enjoy it, but it's for some reason I'm more of a studio painter. But this was one that was done from a photograph.
Okay, let's go on to the next one, Paul.
Okay, this is a special piece to me also, and this was another situation where I was driving down the street and saw this porch of a house that was not particularly well kept, let me put it that way, and kind of, I don't want to say junked up, but it was a lot of things going on the porch. But they had this very prominent American flag there, and it really touched me. These people that may not be getting by or struggling to get by, but they were proud Americans. And they wanted to display that and make it a point to probably put that flag out every day. And I did this painting on election day. I have done this subject several times, but this particular one I did on election day. Um, this painting has also, was notified the other day, been accepted into the Mid-Southern Watercolor annual exhibit. So a few more people will see it. But it was a statement I wanted to make, and the scene touched me, and I wanted to share it the best I could.
Which election day was it? The most recent one?
Yes, the most recent one. Yes, yes. Yeah, this is a fairly new painting.
Yeah.
And this was a large painting. It's a full sheet, what we call a full sheet. It's approximately 22 by 30. It may be 30 by 20 or something, but it's a large painting.
Do people usually know that you took a photo of their home, or is it just kind of a surprise that if they hadn't seen it?
Yeah, in this case, I didn't go up and ask if it was okay. In many cases, I do. If I feel like that I am in any way invading their privacy, ask permission. But as I drive around town, and you'll see in some of the subsequent slides and paintings, if I see something that attracts me, which is usually the light. In this painting, you can see we have some real strong darks, but we have a lot of light and white going on too to complement it, and then of course the colorful flag. But to more directly to answer your question, I don't always ask permission, although I don't think that I'm infringing on anyone's privacy.
Oh, absolutely not.
I hope not, anyway.
Oh, heavens no. Okay, Paul, let's see the next
one. This was a statement I made. The title of it is "View from Dairy Queen." Unfortunately, I frequent Dairy Queen quite often, and I walked out to get in my car, and this is a little bit of an older painting, a few years ago, and there was at that time, if folks remember, there was some kind of low rent buildings there on the other side of the parking lot. And then there's the St. John's Church in the distance. And I just thought it was really an interesting, almost allegory juxtaposition of the church and the slums, if you want to call it that. And then, of course, the church has the crosses on top of the whatever you call those things you're doing up architecturally, and then the telephone pole represented that in the other area. And it was just kind of I was attracted to it visually, but I also saw the metaphor and the allegory there. And so I painted it.
Yeah, I heard a phrase one time, in the shadow of the church steeple, how much need there is, even so close to home as like this, in the shadow of the church. That is amazing. And when I placed this slide on there, it said "From Dairy Queen," and is that the name? Now, how obviously this? I'm going to ask you about some of your other names as we go through. Okay, so let's go ahead to the next one.
All right, this is another important painting that I have kept. This is one of the side doors of the Majestic Hotel, obviously before it burned, before we lost it. And I did this painting in a plein air competition. And it was raining that morning, and I was kind of cramped up in the back of my SUV, painting, looking at the scene at the hotel. And there are actually some raindrops that hit my painting surface that probably helped it and enhanced it. After we lost the hotel, of course, this became more important and more something I did not want to lose. And that's the story behind it. I was very pleased with it technically as a plein air painting rather than a studio painting. And if I remember correctly, it actually won the award. I mean, first place. So that makes it even better.
Absolutely. And when did you paint this one?
Oh, this was probably 10 years ago. Yeah, at least that. Yeah.
The colors are so vibrant. It's a lot of people, I think, when they think of watercolor, it's very thin and very, but your contrast between how dark your darks are and how thin, how you can translucent the others are, the other colors.
Thank you. That's one of the unique qualities of watercolor is the translucence and the glow and the light that can come from watercolor. One other thing I try to keep in mind in my paintings and share with my workshops is that I feel my job as a watercolorist is not to interpret. I mean, it's not to render. If you look at this painting, it's not a real accurate architectural rendering of what I see there. It's an interpretation of it. And the artist, I think, has a responsibility, and it's part of the joy, to put his own spin on it, to interpret it rather than try to just paint a picture that looks like a photograph. Although that's a wonderful skill. But.
Oh, absolutely. But this is much more interesting. You can take a picture and see an exact representation, but to see your human touch or your human impression of it makes it that much more unique and special. Okay, let's go to the next one, Paul.
Okay, this is another historic building here in Hot Springs. This is the side of what I call the old post office of security insurance. And again, was driving down the street, saw that wonderful light and cast shadow and said, oh, there's a painting right there. And it's very loose. It's architecturally not tight and accurate, but again, my job is to interpret, not to render. I had painted the front of what I'll always call the old post office, and it actually I'm letting have been honored that the Garland County Historical Society is using that painting as on T-shirts and other items as fundraiser this year. So I've been very, very honored by that fact. But this is a side view. This is a view you would see from Spencer's Corner.
And now these are images that you've selected as you were driving around, or as they kind of speak to you. Do you do commissioned work?
I do, Mary. I don't particularly enjoy or solicit commission work, but it certainly does help pay the bills. And with commission work, it's a whole different mindset from painting something that I want to, I particularly want to paint for my own edification. You have to try to get into the mind of what that person wants, what they're expecting to see. Usually with commission work, I paint a lot tighter because I do a lot of what I call house portraits, where someone will want me to paint their house, and it needs to look like their house. So that's what I do. But yes, I do commission work, and I appreciate it. And it's sometimes more of a struggle than my more spontaneous paintings that I would do for myself. But that's the way it is. It's very much like, of course, I did a lot of commercial illustration, and so that's basically what a commission is to me in my graphic design business.
Let's take the next one.
Okay. This is a fun painting, and it's also one that has been very successful in shows. I call it One Block Over. I was driving down a street, and usually I passed my turn where I would usually turn. I don't know what was distracting me, but I drove one block further than I normally would and turned down that street, and there was this house. I'd never driven down that street, and this image that you see here was right in front of me. And I said, wow, that's why I drove down this street accidentally. And again, took a quick photograph of it with my phone and did this painting. And this painting has won a couple of awards for me over the years.
And now, to someone, if there are others out there like myself who they might be curious too, what makes this an award winner? Can you describe to us what a judge seeing this would make this stand out from other pieces?
Okay, I jury shows too, so I can have a good response to that. It is, and I'm not saying any of this in a boastful way, but it does represent good watercolor technique. And that is one of the things that a juror will look for. Hey, is he competent in the medium? It's also a decent design. It works pretty well that way. And there is a narrative in this painting. An old house. What's the story? How many families have lived there? What events and what joys and heartbreaks have happened there? And so those are the things: technical competency, good design, and a narrative are the three things that we really try to look for. And there are more things than that. The trees are interesting in that uh, they're not pretty necessarily. They go along with the old antique-looking part of the house. From a design standpoint, the dark values under the porch are really what is the strong value contrast that's created with a white house. So those are things that I look for when I'm during the show, and a couple of folks that during shows like this one, and like I said, it's won a couple of awards, and I still have.
Oh, do you still have this one?
Yeah, I wish there were probably a half a dozen other paintings that years ago I sold that I wish I had, but so I saved them.
Okay, Paul, would you go on to the next one, please? Oh, this one's lovely. These colors are just so vibrant and beautiful.
Well, there's a good story behind this one. And of course, this is the Ozark bathhouse, one of our iconic architectural treasures from downtown. This is a commission painting you mentioned a while ago. A friend of mine, his daughter was getting married, and he asked me if I would, and he was getting married in the first Presbyterian church on Whittington, and the reception was going to be at the Ozark bathhouse and the art center at that time. And he asked me if I would do a painting of both of those structures as a gift, as a wedding gift to their daughter, and I did. And both of them turned out very nice, and this was a successful piece, and one that I felt everybody would recognize. And so I was pleased with it. One of the things that I liked about it was the unexpected color that we see, the turquoise in the cast shadows. That was one of the things that I think added to the interest of this painting. And the cast shadows on the street. Once again, the darks next to the lights. And the flag. Over the last couple of years, I've included flags in a lot of my paintings, whether they were there or not.
They should be if they're not, maybe.
That's right.
Okay. Paul, the next one, please.
This is a shed or a barn or whatever that's on Shady Grove Road, not far from where I live. And I pass it sometimes several times a day as I drive around going places. And I have stopped and gotten out and walked up into the field and photographed it several times, actually. And now it's almost totally decayed and the structure is hardly there anymore. This was something that I did a few years ago. And I show this because it is a hot spring scene, but also it represents a lot of watercolor technique. Watercolor is almost made for skies, painting skies, that loose, soft edge flowing where the colors mix together and make something that there would be no way I could make that happen. The painting, the pigment does itself. And then the architectural structure, the handling of the trees in the landscape. So this represents, if I may be so bold, nice watercolor technique. It's a pretty picture. Doesn't have that strong of narrative or story behind it, but it has its merit.
But I know there's a lot of people out there that it might not be this barn, but it looks like home.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like where they drove by when they were growing up or their grandparents. It looks like home.
It does. It's very iconic for Arkansas. And I love to paint barns. Some people tease me about the fact that I paint barns all the time, but it's just a subject that that I enjoy.
Well, and it has so much life in it, or so much life lived through it. You can see it this one. It's not pristine and clean around it. It's, you know, there's some vines growing there.
Yeah,
This
right.
the yard.
I drove by it the other day, and I alluded to the fact that it's really not there anymore. It's almost totally in decay and falling down. So we preserved it.
Absolutely. Um, okay, so let's go on to the next one, Paul. Oh, this one's beautiful.
Okay, this is a night scene, and I don't do a lot of night scenes, but I enjoy them when I do, and they're obviously very dramatic. And this was downtown Hot Springs, what I call the Sisters. And I was standing in front of the Arlington, took this photograph, and rendered it. I'll say rendered because it was fairly accurate in the depiction of the structure. But again, the fact that it was a night scene was different for me, and what it reminded me of when when I finished the painting and looked at it was what Hot Springs might have looked like in the 30s and early 40s, maybe. It had an atmosphere about it that was not contemporary, and that was good. That was the story.
That's lovely. And it's so nice in Hot Springs. We have these preserved through your paintings, and then we're so fortunate to have so many historic buildings here.
Right. Oh, let's just hope they stay.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Okay, let's go on to the next one, Paul.
All right, I mentioned earlier that I have painted St. John's. I just think it's such a beautiful structure and so iconic, and represents so many things, emotions and thoughts, and that we have when we see it. This is a little unusual in that I took a photograph from Violet Street, and so we have the what I'll call the landscape, the non-architectural part of the painting, and then the church emerges behind that, and I just felt a unique view of something that everyone has seen, looked at, driving, down Grand. And again, this was in the afternoon because of the wonderful light that hits that side of it and creates the value contrast. But I particularly like it being partially hidden behind behind the organic elements in the painting. And also, it was accidental, but the streaking striations in the sky, I felt added to the narrative, but however you want to interpret that. And
Now,
one of my favorite sayings is, "I'd rather be lucky than good." So
how many times was this a painting that you started with this combination in mind and you created this, or did it take you several efforts,
no,
several efforts?
actually, this is from a photograph that I took again from Violet and Quapaw, but there were in the organic area there were actually some houses, and I took them out. And no, this is the only painting of St. John's I've done from this perspective and from this view. But I took obviously poetic license or artistic license, and eliminated some elements that I didn't think made the comment that I wanted to make. And I think between the architectural element and the organic element, where the yin and the yang and all those sort of things, it's an interesting piece, and it's another one that I have not sold, that I've kept.
And now, when you're creating a painting, do you usually do a lot of pre-planning and think about what you want the finished piece to look like before you begin?
I I should do more than I do. I do what is called value sketches, which is a monochromatic approach to the subject. Usually, I use a gray that I can get real dark and then also very very light, and spend 10 minutes or so on a sketch. That what I'm doing there is designing the piece, the composition. I'm eliminating things. I'm moving things around. I'm exaggerating some things. and I'm the designer and the art director of the painting. And sometimes I'll just do a pencil sketch. Other times I'll actually do my value sketch with paint and brush, because then I'm actually experiencing the painting process that I will go through when I'm doing the final painting. I should have included some value sketches in this slideshow, because they often turn out better than the final painting. But
Well,
yes, I do preliminary thinking, preliminary sketches, uh, even to the point of the value sketches with paint, because watercolor, it's a drying process. You start wet, obviously, and then as it dries, we often have very limited windows of opportunity to make a certain effect happen. And so, through preliminary thinking and sketching, we kind of know what the process is going to be, and that greatly helps our success rate. Now, I've said all that, and it sounds very academic and wonderful. Uh, I do a lot of paintings just spontaneously, without doing any sketching or planning. They don't all turn out very well. Some of them do. But good question.
okay, let's go on to the next one. Oh, a chef.
Okay, this is another special painting for me for various reasons, and it's one I still have. Uh, this is one of the few figurative paintings that I've included in this slideshow. This is actually was from a photograph I took in Eureka Springs. I was having dinner there with Stevie, my dear lady friend, and another couple that were with us. And we were having dinner in a very nice restaurant there, and they had an open kitchen. And I kept watching the chef working back and forth, and I finally got up and asked him if I could take a couple of pictures, and he consented. And so this was from one of the one of the photographs that I took in Eureka Springs. And what's so important about this, it's not so much, and this painting actually has won a couple of nice awards for me. But the main thing about it is that it is a memory of that evening with special friends. And it really, really is. And that's why I'll never let it go. Because unfortunately, one of the friends we were with is no longer with us. And so makes it even.
And how very fortunate you are to be able to savor that moment by creating a piece of artwork that captures not only a photo of it, but a memory of it. That's
I in doing the painting, I interpreted rather than rendered. There's a lot of things there that are not accurate to the photograph, but I felt that they were made a better design. So, but yeah, it's a special piece for me, and for the reasons that I shared with you.
Paul.
Oh wow, looky here.
I like this one.
No, this, of course, is the Waters, another one of our downtown iconic structures. And I was driving up the street and actually just stopped and photographed this with my phone because of once again, the wonderful light, the wonderful moment that I felt it captured. And I felt in doing the painting that I did it justice. I was very pleased with both the architectural aspect of it and the other elements that are involved, the foliage, the trees, the cars, the feeling of activity on Central Avenue. And so I wanted to share this one, especially for Mary.
Well, and this question, not so much about this one, but just in general. I look at your piece, at your work, and it is so impressive, and I just admire so much your ability to be able to create these pieces. But you, as an artist, is there something that you constantly struggle with? Is there one little thing that when you look at a piece, your eye goes to that's your constant?
One of the things that I think a lot of artists in answering that question would say is it is the difficulty of resisting the temptation to try to match the photograph and or in a plein air painting situation, be accurate to what's in front of you. Since I've been at this a long time, it's not as much a problem as it used to be, but I'm much more inclined to interpret rather than render. I've used that phrase several times, but I think you know what I mean by that. Yeah, to put my own interpretation or spin or vision into a piece rather than simply trying to match a photograph. That's a great skill, and as in commercial art, I used to have to do that quite a bit. But in my personal painting experience, I want to be more flexible than that.
Well,
And as I said, I think other artists would agree that being interpretive is what we're really wanting to do.
And in this one, it's such a balance between being able to capture the architectural intricacy of the building.
Mm-hmm.
But when you really look at it, it's still your loose style, but just the ability to do both is
I appreciate you recognizing that. There was an awful lot I left off the building. I think people that know that building would see this and say, "Well, yeah, that's the Waters."
Oh, absolutely.
But there's a lot of architectural detail that I omitted on purpose. But thank you. Yes, it's an interpretation of an iconic structure in Hot Springs.
Absolutely.
Wonderful place to have dinner too.
I agree. Okay, Paul, let's go to the next one. Oh, this one's
Okay. In the slideshow, we've seen a lot of architectural things because I was painting Hot Springs, but I really would like to think that I'm not limited to any particular subject or style even. I like to paint architectural. I like to paint landscapes. I like to paint still lifes. I like to paint figures and people. I ran across this photograph. This is not one that I had taken, but I ran across this photograph, and I just thought that was just a wonderful view. In fact, it was a black and white photograph, and an interesting subject matter. So I did this painting, added the color that I envisioned, and in the photograph there were no people, there were no figures, and I added the work crew headed to the tugboat and dry dock, and I felt like that added both interest. Anytime we have figures or a human element in a design, it becomes a center of interest. It also allowed me to enter into the painting, and the viewer to enter into the painting. The larger figure here on the right-hand side and the smaller ones as they get farther away gave a feeling of what we call atmospheric perspective. It pushed the boat and the figures further back. So it was just kind of a fun one, and I enjoyed doing it. And I have, for whatever reason, over the last few years, have done a lot of paintings of boats. They're very romantic, and they're very interesting structures and designs, and this was one of them.
okay. Paul, for the next.
Mm-hmm. Oh, most people will recognize this. Mary, do you have anything to say? I keep jumping in real quick, and I should...
Oh, no, you're perfect. This is great.
All right, this was another commission piece. I was contacted by a lady who had photographed this from the Hot Springs Tower, and obviously it's the Arlington Hotel and the Medical Arts Building across from it, and it was just a view that was enchanting. I'd never seen anything like that. I hadn't been on the tower in years, of course, and asked me if I would paint it, and this was the result of that. And I asked her permission if I could do some more paintings from it, not to be sold, but just for my own enjoyment. And I did I did another one where I left all of the foreground foliage off of it and actually did not complete all of the buildings. There was kind of skeletal of an incomplete painting, and it was really one of my, again, I still have that, one of the most interesting views and handling of this subject. But I was pleased with this, and the client was pleased with it.
Well, and it's interesting how you can put, I mean, because you're much more intimately aware of the life and history of these sculptures than someone who was just would be visiting here from another city or another country to paint the same structure. Um,
Right. No,
Paul?
I'm obviously a native of Hot Springs, born and raised here and still here. And all of these images that you've seen tonight of architectural elements all have some meaning to me personally. Either I have experiences there, or the very first one we looked at on Belding. I grew up on Belding. That house was half a block from where I grew up as a very young boy. So and of course the Arlington. Good grief, how many events have I attended there? And uh, also the Medical Arts Building. And remember going to the doctor there as a little kid. So that makes for an artist to have a more intimate connection with the subject always means, in my experience anyway, that I'm going to do a little bit better job of it. Those things that I care about, for some reasons, the paintings turn out better. That makes sense?
Absolutely. I think we just have a couple more that are even a different style. There we go.
Yeah.
This is like,
Yeah, I purposely included this landscape snow scene because it would show the different approach to painting and the handling of watercolor technique. Again, watercolor is just made for things like this, the soft edge, the gradation of the values and the color. I also collected this, I use this as my Christmas card, online Christmas card this year. Salutation at the time. So, but again, just showing a different subject. Again, I'd like to think I paint a little of everything.
yes, absolutely. And to be able to use so few colors to create such a vivid scene is,
There were three colors involved in this painting: a brown and a blue and a little ochre. So,
wow.
yeah, it's all about value in this case, lights and darks.
Okay, Paul, one, and I think this is the last one,
This is the
maybe.
last one, I believe. Uh, I used to paint a lot of flowers and still do occasionally. In a workshop, I'll usually do a flower as one of the subject demos because people like to paint flowers. This is a very unusual approach to a floral, and it not necessarily look like any particular flower or bouquet or anything. It's very, very abstract, but it was energetic and had a design appeal about it that I really liked. And this is one of those I wish I still had. I can't remember where it is now. Someone purchased it. But I just particularly like the color contrast and the energy that was in the handling of the bouquet. So again, just showing a different subject matter rather than all architecture. What do you think, Mary?
It's beautiful. And thank you so much for including such diverse subject matter too. I mean, because you can really see, I mean, I've seen several of it. I've seen several, many pieces of your artwork, and um, each style is so very different from the floral to the snow scene, and of course the architecture. I especially like you sharing all of the hot springs architecture. Um,
I did that thinking that the audience might enjoy that more.
yeah,
Let me finish my part of it maybe with an observation. That I'm often asked, how many watercolors have you done? How many paintings have you done? And a couple of months ago, I sat down and really tried to figure that out. And what I came up with was I've done close to 8,000 watercolors. Now, to carry that a step or two farther, because of the challenge that watercolor represents, of those 8,000, 7,000 were no good. And I really mean that. I mean, every painting is practice for the next one. So when I do a painting that doesn't work, that's okay. I've learned something from it. Of the remaining 1,000, maybe 500 of them were okay. They were, maybe I'll put a mat on them or something. And of the remaining 500, maybe 300 of those were pretty darn good. Those are okay. And the last 200, and this is over 40 years of painting, the last 200 were really good. They were winners. They were ones that I was proud of. And I'm sharing that information and those numbers to not say that I'm not any good at this, because I have had some luck, but that it's all about work, and you spend time practicing, practice, and you don't worry about the end result. Maybe especially with watercolor, because it'll body slam you to the ground more often than not. But the joy that I get out of doing a good watercolor, or even doing an average watercolor that over here in this corner, boy, that's really nice. That's really special, and that's what keeps me going. And I think other artists would echo that. So I don't know if we want to talk some more, but I've had a wonderful time sharing my thoughts and my art, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. I think the only thing we'll wrap up with is we'll ask Paul if there are any questions, or if you have any questions, or if there were any questions from the viewers this evening.
There's lots of love in the comments and some questions too. So first of all, don't know how to pronounce this name, Gefer, fantastic artist. Karishma says, very interesting sketches. And Joy asked, did cartooning help you become a better watercolor artist, or vice versa?
Wonderful question, and the answer is yes. It's all about design, whether it's a cartoon or an oil painting or a piece of sculpture or a watercolor. And I draw, and cartooning is drawing. It's design.
When you were talking about the napkin art, it reminded me of this video I saw of this artist who rides in the New York subway system, and he'll do kind of candid portraits in the.
I have seen that video also, yeah.
Yeah, while the other passengers aren't looking, and then he'll surprise them with it, and their reactions are great.
But it really is a joy. I consider myself very lucky to be able to share that with people. Do a quick little sketch, or again, maybe it's just a calligraphy out thank you or something, and to share that with someone that may have had the previous customer was hard to get along with, or someone complained about something that they had no control over. It's a real joy. It really is.
Dana says, for me, the hardest thing about getting into watercoloring is resisting the urge to go back over where I already painted.
Yes. You get, I mentioned, you get really one good shot at it. You put down a wash of color, and if you go back in there, you start losing the translucence and the transparency that is the beauty of watercolor. Often I have noticed in my workshops that people who have come to watercolor from an oil painting background really have trouble taking into watercolor, because they're used to being able to manipulate that and massage the area as much as they need to get what they want. And it doesn't work in watercolor. That's why of 8,000 watercolors, 7,000 of them were no good.
Joanne says, Richard does beautiful commissions too.
Thank you, Joanne. I mentioned that I don't always enjoy commissions. I don't, but they really do help pay the bill, and I do enjoy them ultimately. But they're a different mental process when you do a commission than from when I just paint something that I want to paint.
Right. You have to impress someone else and live up to their expectations.
Exactly. You have to get into their mind. And I'll briefly share a quick story that illustrates that. I was commissioned to do a house portrait of a real beautiful home here in Hot Springs. And the gentleman said, we love your work, whatever you want to do, We'll be happy with it. So I went out there, photographed all around the house, and selected a view that I thought represented and it did represent the house real well, and the surrounding area, and the landscaping, etc. Did the painting. I was very pleased with it. Delivered it to them, and the wife said, "Oh, I was hoping you'd get the azaleas in the front door." And I had taken it from a little bit of the side, so I'd have some depth to it. Well, I did it again. I did it from the view that the lady wanted, and they generously bought both of them, so it worked out real well. But that's what I mean about trying to get into their mind and know what they want, and mainly what the commission wants is I want it to look like my house or my boat or my whatever, and I can do that. So.
Another question from Joy. How do I keep my palette from drying out?
Okay. You can put a damp sponge into your palette and if your palette has a lid to it, put the lid on it, and that will keep it moist for a longer time. If you just even overnight, it'll dry out. So either put a damp sponge is what I use, or wet paper towels in there so that there's some moisture in there. There's also a product, and I'm not promoting this product, but it's called Masterson Palette, and it's basically a piece of Tupperware, and standard palettes fit inside it. And every evening when I'm through painting, I put the lid on it and seal it with my sponges in there, and I can come back to it even several days later, and my paint is still moist. But if you just leave it overnight open, it'll dry out.
John says, very informative and interesting. Thanks for the program. The narrative aspect of a painting is something I will continue to ponder.
That's good. The narrative is really what it's all about. I mean, I don't always do strong narrative or create strong narrative in all of my paintings. Sometimes I just do a pretty picture. Well, hopefully it's a pretty picture. But those paintings that are special have a narrative, have a story, have something that the viewer can connect with beyond the image that's there. And I hope to get better and better at that.
Martha says, wonderful felt memories.
Thank you, Martha.
Denise says, I've seen your work hanging in some of the interior rooms at CHI St. Vincent, and I'm thankful for them. They're the next best thing to having a window outside.
That's been a real joy to me to have work at the hospital, and it has been to other artists. There have been many, many occasions where someone will say to me, I was in an outpatient waiting room, and there was one of your paintings. And they took it and shared with me that they took that as a positive sign. That's pretty nice, not that it was great painting or anything. It's just that there's somebody, I know him, and I'm here, I'm a little nervous. That's kind of nice and soothing, and maybe a positive omen. And I've had that over the years because I've had paintings there for many years. Had that happen probably a half a dozen times, and that's really kind of special. And I know other artists have too.
A question from Kelly, what's your dream scene to paint?
I'd say that one more time.
Your dream scene to paint.
Dream scene. Well, I have this fantasy that I've always wanted to go to Australia. Australia is a watercolor mecca for some reason. Apparently the light there is just wonderful. And several of the top watercolorists in the world live in Australia or from Australia. That would be one answer. But there's no particular thing I want to paint subject-wise. I mentioned through the slideshow that mainly what I'm looking for is contrast, light and dark. I don't color. I can mix colors with pretty much what I want, but the value is what it's really all about. The value between the light and the dark and the midtones in between. If I get those things right with any subject, then I'm going to probably have a reasonably successful painting. But in terms of subject, I like to paint anything.
And
That's a
one
good
more.
question, and I did not give her a definitive answer, and I apologize for that.
It was still an interesting answer. Let's see. One more sweet comment from Karishma. All your artworks are masterpieces. Ozark Bathhouse one is beautiful. Love how an artist can put his memories and special moments on a canvas. Makes it even more special.
Thank you. It's one of the real perks and joys of being an artist. It really, really is. And as I mentioned again during the slideshow, I have purposely not sold a lot of those paintings because they're special to me. They're special because either I'm real proud of the painting or the moment that they represent, the memory they represent to me, uh, or maybe the history of the painting and shows and exhibits. It's a real joy.
And here's one last question. I can answer this one from Joanne. Could you remind us when your next workshop is at the library? And we usually host Mr. Stevens here in October each year. We haven't been able to the last couple of years because of COVID, obviously. But we do have one booked for October, but we're hoping to have two this year. We were talking before the program, and we don't want everyone to wait until October. So hopefully we'll have one earlier in the spring, COVID allowing. But so we'll follow up in the near future and keep an eye out for an announcement about that. And hopefully there'll be two opportunities this year.
Paul and I are going to get our calendars together and make sure that we have two this year. That'll be fun.
Absolutely.
And I have one more. If people want to see your artwork, where how could they see more of your work, Richard?
Okay, that's a question I'm often asked. I'm really, at the moment, I'm not in any galleries. I love galleries. They're very, very important, and they've been important to me in the past. But because of my marketing and advertising background, I kind of can promote my work reasonably well myself. And in the last 15 years, I have sold directly myself 1,283 paintings. So that's where they can. Your question is where they can see it. I have over 2,000 paintings on my Facebook page, Richard Stevens, and that's the first place I mention to people who want to see the work. The other thing that I do is if someone really wants to see physically, hands-on, in the real thing, I will bring it to them. I don't have a place where I can, a gallery or a space where I can show the work, but I can bring 40 or 50 loose paintings, not framed, but matted, to a location, and I'll leave it with them for a day or two and get out of their hair because I don't want to be standing there when they're looking at them and feel the stress of, oh, well, we're going to buy something because Richard's standing over our shoulder, and that's never the case. But please contact me if you see something on my Facebook page that you're interested in, and I will respond with availability, size, and price. And I ship paintings all over the country.
Well, this program was a fantastic way to start the year of programming, our first adult virtual program of the year, and set the bar very high. You did a great job, Mr. Stevens.
Well, thank you. I felt like I bumbled around a little bit, but I think I expressed my feelings about the work and my passion for art. All I did.
Absolutely.
Again, thank you both very much. I'm honored to be part of this, and again, because it's with the library, and I'm a strong affection for the library and history that I've had with it. It makes it even more special. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I have one more little plug that I want to do, in addition to thanking Richard one more time and reminding everyone about Gallery Walk on Friday night. And I think there may be some artists who are watching this evening or will be catching the program in the coming days. And I want to mention a couple of opportunities for artists that we have coming up, calls for artists on the hotspringsart.org webpage. One is for Art Springs artists, which is Art Springs takes place during Arts in the Park. And that's the 30th of April and 1st of May. It's a downtown arts festival. So if artists are interested in that, the call for artists is on that website. Also, call for artists for Art Moves, which is the temporary art exhibit down along the Hot Springs Creek Greenway Trail, just north of Hollywood, kind of between Hollywood and Belding. There's an annual art exhibit that goes up there. The theme this year is Creative Roots. So our artists are invited to interpret that any way they like, whether they're personal creative roots, their creative roots of their heritage or ancestors, or hot springs, something about our history that inspires artwork. So we just invite other artists like Richard and every artist who's out there to check out those calls for artists and be a part of our local arts community. Thanks to Richard, who has been here his entire life and continues to share his incredible talent, and so many other artists who live and work here that we want to make sure. And the mission of the Hot Springs Area Cultural Alliance is celebrate, advocate, and promote the arts and culture of this area. So to those of you who aren't artists out there, support the arts community. When you buy a gift, buy art. And support our local creative economy.
Thank you. Barry does a wonderful job of promoting and supporting art and artists in Hot Springs. Very much appreciated.
If I only had more walls and more money, I could do more.
Well, I have a lot of small paintings.
And speaking of all of Mary's support for local artists, and looks like Mr. Stevens is frozen there. But this is just one of many videos in this Gallery Walk Talk series. And like Mary said, they're all available to watch in the future as well. So if you tuned in late to this one, or you just want to share it, which we appreciate, to show other people, please do so. All the videos are available and archived in the library's Facebook videos list, and on YouTube. On our YouTube channel, you'll be able to go back and see the past videos in the Gallery Walk Talk series. And there's been several local artists, including Mr. Stevens' friend / rival, Gary Simmons.
Gary and I are each other's best supporter, and there's nobody we'd rather beat than the other one.
Not to be called Gary Stevens or confused.
Yeah, right. We get called Richard Simmons a lot.
Yeah, he probably gets called Gene Simmons too.
Yeah.
Yes,
Gary's been a real mentor to me. I have learned so much from him in terms of the art. Maybe have been able to share a few things with him in watercolor. He made me mad. He's taken up watercolor recently, and he won an award ahead of mine in the show last year. So. Yeah. Something else we can tease each other about. Doing extremely well with watercolor.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again to the audience for checking this out and your support. And this program series, Gallery Walk Talk, is tentatively scheduled for the first Wednesday every month. Mary, do you have a guest announcement at this time for February?
Nope, still waiting to finalize. But be
good.
watching the Facebook page for the library and the Cultural Alliance, and we will start promoting that soon. The next program will be on February 2nd.
That's right. All right. Any final remarks from either of you?
Just a sincere thank you for allowing me to be part of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, Richard. Thank you so much. Not only your time this evening, but all the thought and preparation that you put into selecting which pieces you would share. I know you've been working on that for a while to make sure you shared the right representation of your work, and something that really speaks to the people who are watching the program.
Yep. And there were 8,000 to choose from. So
That's right. We still have a whole lot of them.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
good night, everyone, and Happy New Year.